I think I saw a question coming in the chat, Jen, that pertains exactly to what we're talking about. If I'm not mistaken, what do we got, Jen?
Yes, we have a question from Brad. He says, what are your thoughts between hiring an FTE, which takes a long-term large salary commitment and requires complexities like benefits and payroll taxes, versus hiring from contracting shops or sites like TopTal?
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just laying it up for you because you've been involved in placing contractors and full-time employees. So I'm sure you're having this conversation with startups, founders, managers, executives all the time.
Yeah.
Go
my
for
favorite
it.
conversation. It's my favorite conversation to have these days, right? So again, one is not right, one is not wrong, right? But I am a huge advocate, not necessarily for FTE versus contractor. What I'm a huge advocate for is a global workforce, right? So ever since the pandemic and the whole push for work from home, I think what's happened is people have realized a lot of the talent that is out there in the global market. So I primarily work with talent in Latin America, Brazil, Costa Rica, Mexico. And what I always say is they're the best bang for your buck. Does it mean it's the right fit for every company? No. But there are things to consider that when your runway is precious and your capital is limited, when you hire on an FTE, Brad, I think hit the nail on the head. The hidden costs that we don't think about, payroll taxes, benefits, time off, right? That can add an additional 20% on to that base salary that people don't think about. My business handle, it works in the same capacity like a Top Tall or a Bears Dev does. And what we do is we actually match up talent from Latin America to kind of scale into early stage businesses. And I've got people who work out of Brazil who've been in the same company for 4+ years, and they're a core part of that team. They're just not based in, San Francisco or LA, and they're going to go to your office and use your air hockey table that you promised that, that you put in your job description and saying like, hey, we got air hockey and snacks, come work for me, that people don't ever use, right? So the companies I say that are winning are the ones that realize that a global workforce just unlocks more talent potential than they ever had before.
Go global. I totally agree with that because you can find so many great deals. Let's break this down for all the different types, and you can jump in, Tony, if you got some thoughts on this. But there are so many different combinations of types of employees, types of contractors, and some contractors work like employees and some employees work like contractors. I haven't been employed in a meaningful way with the traditional taxes and the insurance and all that stuff for a very, very long time. So, but I will act like a full-time employee, like a contractor. You might find someone like that. Now, if you're looking for short-term technical expertise, contractors are great. But eventually, you keep using contractors, it's not going to work out if they have their own business. You have their overhead, their profitability have to look at. But then if you hire a contractor who, say, is just a freelancer and they're looking for other work at the same time, you might not get all their best and you want them to be a full-time employee. Now, some contractors become full-time employees. But then there are employees that are in a spot where they can be a contractor. They don't need all the health insurance. They don't need all the benefits. They'll work and they'll be dedicated to you until you can take them full time. But as always, if you've got the runway, you've got the systems, you know what you need them to do. You understand the org chart and you understand how to generate revenue. If you're paying $1 to an employee, how you get $3 out of that, how you get $5. Like if you look at the revenue per employee from Netflix compared to Disney, it is astronomical. Just go look it up. I'm not going to quote it because I'm going to get flamed for not knowing my numbers, but the disparity between how much revenue someone in Google and Netflix generates per employee compared to Disney is unbelievable. You have to have those systems in place. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, so you just kind of put a lot out there, to kind of unpack it a little bit, right? I think it depends on what your need is. I think that, the Upworks of the world can be very, very advantageous if you just need a short-term project to get done because you're trying to hit a milestone or a deliverable. I think long-term contractors, that's more of a classification, and basically it's more of a mentality and a cultural, thing, if more than anything else, right? Calling somebody a contractor versus full-time employee, really it's a matter of paperwork, right? Where there's some legalities involved in the country of origin where they just legally can't be called an employee. But like I said earlier, I've got some contractors who have been in the core team for 4 years plus, right? They're treated like the core team. So so it's all in how you as the founder choose to project onto them, right? If you choose to treat them like a contractor and keep them at an arm's length, then that's how they're going to act. If you choose to bring them in as a part of the core team and they're part of your your stand-ups and your celebrations and your wins, and you're soliciting feedback from them just as much as you would from somebody down the street, then I promise you they are going to go to war for you and make sure that they deliver everything that they possibly can. So it really starts with us as founders to make sure is like, how are we going to treat this talent? Because they're a human being first, regardless of how you classify them. So I have some contractors, they have equity stakes in businesses. They do. And so they put in the reps every day because they believe in what they're building. And I have some other that they're more of an augmentation idea where they layer onto the core team and they work on certain projects while other members work on new features. So it's just a variety and a mixture of things, right? But one of the big things, and I want early stage founders to realize this, is that buzzword is still AI. Not a day goes by where I don't meet a new founder who's building something around AI. You probably should be, right? But there's only so many machine learning engineers in the world right now, right? It's still relatively new and the talent is thin. And what's happening is the Metas and the Googles and of the world, they're paying huge salaries to these US based engineers just to keep them on staff. Half of them don't even have anything to do, but they would rather pay them to keep them on staff than let them go to the competitor. So you think about that. These guys are getting paid $250,000 to $350,000 a year. Now you're an early stage startup. Maybe you got the first round of funding. That's great. But now you're going to try to compete with half of that and say, I'll give you half of what you're making now to go from the security of, working at Amazon to come working for my startup and we'll give you equity. It's not always the most attractive, right? So again, unlocking your talent pool and saying, there are thousands of machine learning engineers in Latin America who have doctorates in this sort of stuff, speak English, and are going to be able to deliver just as much as if somebody US takes them. That is the secret to really moving your startup forward at a nice clip, is just, again, realizing you don't have to have talent in US in order to move it forward.
Well, with that topic, Alan, that question answered. Thanks, Brad, for sending in that question.